What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction, and this one we have Ancient Indian Wisdom That Transformed America. I am very intrigued about this video. Before we get to it, if you guys happen to enjoy, don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and let's see what we got.
It was the early 19th century in America, which was a nation of just 17 states, with fewer people than today's New York City. The country was young, ambitious, and hungry for new ideas. Information traveled slowly by horse, wagon, and riverboat. But in bustling seaports like Boston, a trickle of exotic knowledge from India began to flow. British scholars like Sir William Jones and Henry Thomas Colebrook were translating ancient Indian scriptures. Charles Wilkins had just produced the first English version of the Bhagavad Gita, a dialogue between the warrior prince Arjuna and the divine Krishna. These exotic writings from a far-off land are making their way to American shores, and they're about to spark an intellectual revolution. Our story begins with Ralph Waldo Emerson, born in 1803 in Boston, a bustling seaport town where ships from distant lands bring not just spices and fabrics, but also books and ideas. Young Emerson, growing up in this intellectual melting pot, is about to encounter something that will change his life and American literature forever. Emerson's father, a Unitarian minister, was fascinated by Eastern philosophy. He'd often discuss articles about India in his literary club. Though he passed away when Ralph was only 8, he planted seeds of curiosity that would later bloom in his son's mind. Fast forward to 1817. Emerson enters Harvard. He's not exactly a star student, but he's got an insatiable appetite for knowledge. He devours books on ancient Greek philosophy, modern European thought, and, you guessed it, works about India. His aunt, Mary Moody Emerson, feeds his curiosity with works on Indian history, beliefs, and religious practices. By the time Emerson graduates, he has absorbed 4 key ideas from these Indian texts. 1. India is a land of deep spiritual wisdom. 2. The material universe is an expression of divine power, and our purpose is to realize our unity with this source. 3. The concept of Maya, the idea that the material world is a kind of illusion hiding the underlying oneness of all things. 4. The belief in reincarnation, that souls transmigrate from one body to another over many lifetimes. These ideas would become the foundation of Emerson's philosophy, shaping his writing and, in turn, American thought for generations to come. Now let's pause for a moment and consider the America Emerson was living in. It's 1821, and the country has grown to 24 states with 9.6 million citizens. Most people are farmers, but new technologies are appearing at a dizzying pace. Some intellectuals, alarmed by this rapid materialism, start looking for alternatives. Emerson was one of them. After a brief stint as a Unitarian minister, Emerson has a crisis of faith. He can't reconcile Christian doctrines with his expanding worldview. In 1859, he wrote in his journal, "When India was explored and the wonderful riches of Indian theological literature found, that dispelled once and for all the dream about Christianity being the sole revelation. For here in India, there in China, were the same principles, the same grandeurs, the like depths, moral and intellectual." In
that absolutely brings up a great point. Ralph Waldo Emerson, is that Disney? Did he make Disney? Or am I tripping? Was that somebody else? I don't know. I just know that name, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what I can attach it to. But it seems like he definitely read a lot, had a real thirst for knowledge, and had a real thirst for Indian literature. And he learned key principles from reading about India's history, about India's spirituality, about reading these things. And he took those principles with him wherever he went, and it sounds like they just played a huge part in his life.
In 1834, Emerson moved to Concord, Massachusetts. 2 years later, he founded the Transcendental Club. These freethinkers are disgusted with the vulgarity of a commercial aristocracy and the materialistic working of rational religion. They're looking for something more, and they find it in Indian philosophy. Emerson dives deep into texts like the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote in his journal, "I owed a magnificent day to the Bhagavad Gita. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spake to us, nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent. The voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the same questions that exercise us." But Emerson doesn't just read these texts, he internalizes them, blends them with his own thoughts, and creates something new. In 1836, Emerson published Nature, often called the Transcendentalist Manifesto. In it, he proclaimed that the individual soul and the universal spirit were one, echoing the Vedantic concept of Atman is Brahman. Emerson wrote, "Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God." This ecstatic vision of unity with nature and the divine was a radical departure from traditional Christian theology. In 1838, Emerson was proposing what scholar Robert Gordon calls a new metaphysics of consciousness, where the main obstacle to fulfillment is not sin, but ignorance of our divine nature, a core precept in Vedanta. Throughout his career, Emerson's work was peppered with references to Hindu philosophy. His poem, Hamatreya, was based on a passage from the Vishnu Puran. The poem's title is a shortened version of Hail Maitreya. In it, the poet shares the teachings of the sage Parashar, who answers his disciple Maitreya's question about the true value of worldly possessions. To explain the sage's message about the deeper meaning of life, the poet includes the earth song and the tale of some landowners. The opening stanza of his poem, Brahma. "If the red slayer think he slays, or if the slain think he is slain, they know not well the subtle ways. I keep and pass and turn again."
Slain, think he is slain. They know not well the subtle ways. I keep and pass and turn again.
Is almost a direct translation of passages from the Katha Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita. Emerson's theory of compensation echoes the law of karma. He writes, "You cannot do wrong without suffering wrong." The exclusive in fashionable life does not see that he excludes himself from enjoyment in the attempt to appropriate it. The exclusionist in religion does not see that he shuts the door of heaven on himself in striving to shut out others. "Treat men as pawns and ninepins, and you shall suffer as well as they. If you leave out their heart, you shall lose your own." His essay, The Oversoul, mirrors the Vedantic idea that everything is an expression of Brahman. We live in succession, in division, in parts, in particles. Meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And this deep power in which we exist, and whose beatitude is all accessible to us, is not only self-sufficing and perfect in every hour, but the act of seeing and the thing seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and the object, are one. We see the world piece by piece, as the sun, the moon, the animal, the tree, but the whole, of which these are shining parts, is the soul. But Emerson...
You can absolutely see in his writing and hearing his writing, he definitely took a lot of influence from the Bhagavad Gita and other books of Indian literature, because of all the videos I've watched on India, they definitely kind of articulated these things. So it's very awesome how he took these this wisdom from India and applied it in his own life, and look how successful his life ended up being. It's like he gained a true understanding.
Emerson isn't just a philosopher regurgitating ancient wisdom. He's a mystic, describing his own transcendent experiences in terms that echo the Upanishads. In 1837, he wrote in his journal, "Who shall define to me an individual? I behold with awe and delight many illustrations of the one universal mind. I see my being embedded in it. As a plant in the earth, so I grow in God. I am only a form of him. He is the soul of me. I can even with a mountainous aspiring say, I am God, by transferring my me out of the films and unclean precincts of my body. A certain wandering light comes to me, which I instantly perceive to be the cause of causes. It transcends all proving. It is itself the ground of being, and I see that it is not one and I another, but this is the life of my life. That is one fact, then, that in certain moments I have known that I existed directly from God and am, as it were, his organ, and in my ultimate consciousness am he. Dang. This is strikingly similar to the Upanishadic declaration, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Emerson's genius lies in his ability to take these profound Hindu concepts and express them in a way that resonates with the American spirit. Now, let's shift our focus to Henry David Thoreau, Emerson's protege. friend and fellow transcendentalist. If Emerson was the mind of America, Thoreau was its soul. On July 4th, 1845, Independence Day, fittingly enough, Thoreau moves into a small cabin by Walden Pond, embarking on his famous 2-year experiment in simple living. He brings with him books from Emerson's library, including the Bhagavad Gita. This text becomes his constant companion during his 2 years of solitude. In Walden, Thoreau writes, "In the morning I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, since whose composition years of the gods have elapsed, and in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial, and I doubt if that philosophy is not to be referred to a previous state of existence, so remote is its sublimity from our conceptions." Thoreau immersed himself in Hindu philosophy, reading every volume he could get his hands on. He praised the Vedas, writing, "What extracts from the Vedas I have read fall on me like the light of a higher and purer luminary, which describes a loftier course through a purer stratum." Like Emerson, Thoreau doesn't just read these texts, he lives them. He has mystical experiences in nature that he can only explain through the lens of Indian philosophy. As scholar Alan Hodder puts it, he had moments of euphoria and rapture in nature, but he couldn't really explain them until he started reading the Indian material. Then he actually saw references to what he was experiencing, and he thought, aha, I'm not the only one having this. There's a long tradition to it. Thoreau even calls himself...
So it was like it clicked for him, like, yeah, there's so many people who have experienced this before me. And it took reading the Bhagavad Gita for him to truly understand that. And so this Indian wisdom absolutely helped Ralph Waldo Emerson and then his predecessor, Henry Thoreau. Dang. Now I'm feeling like I need to read the Bhagavad Gita.
...of a yogi. In a letter to a friend, Harrison Blake, in 1849, Thoreau writes, "Free in this world as the birds in the air, disengaged from every kind of chains, those who have practiced the yoga gather in Brahma the certain fruit of their works. Depend upon it that, rude and careless as I am, I would fain practice the yoga faithfully." The yogi, absorbed in contemplation, contributes in his degree to creation. He breathes a divine perfume. He hears wonderful things. Divine forms traverse him without tearing him, and united to the nature which is proper to him, he acts as animating original matter. To some extent, and at rare intervals, even I am a yogi. But Thoreau isn't content with just contemplation. He's a man of action, a karma yogi in the truest sense. His night in jail for refusing to pay taxes to support slavery and the Mexican War becomes a powerful act of civil disobedience, influencing future activists like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Now, let's turn to our third literary giant, Walt Whitman. Born in 1819, Whitman came to Indian philosophy.
That just reminded me, Ralph, that it was Walt Disney who created it. I feel like an absolute idiot. It wasn't Ralph Waldo Emerson. But that name, I just have to look up where I know the name from. Is he just the author? Ralph Waldo Emerson. I've heard that name. I know that name so much. Yeah, he was an author, poet, essayist, poet, lecturer, philosopher, abolitionist. Dang. But I feel like I wouldn't have known all that. So how did I get to know that name? I don't know.
A bit later than Emerson and Thoreau. At the age of 35, in 1854, while working as a carpenter in Brooklyn, he discovers Emerson's essays. They ignite something in him. Inspired by Emerson, Whitman published his groundbreaking poetry collection, Leaves of Grass, in 1855. Emerson calls it the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed, and noted that the work was a mixture of the Bhagavad Gita and the New York Herald. While Whitman may not have read the Bhagavad Gita directly at first, he absorbs its essence through Emerson. As literary critic Malcolm Cowley notes, most of Whitman's doctrines, though by no means all of them, belong to the mainstream of Indian philosophy. As Whitman delved deeper into Indian philosophy, its influence became more apparent in his work. In his poem Passage to India, he exalts the ancient land's myths and fables, far-darting beams of the spirit, unloosed dreams, and deep-diving Bibles and legends. Whitman's poetry is pure bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. He sees the divine in everything, from blades of grass to human bodies. In Song of Myself, he
That
writes,
definitely sounds
I see
like,
something of God each hour of the
Hinduism.
24, and each moment then, in the faces of men and women, I see God, and in my own face in the glass, I find letters from God dropped in the street, and everyone is signed by God's name, and I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come for ever and ever. This vision of the divine permeating all of creation echoes the Upanishadic concept of Brahman as the underlying reality of all existence. This celebration of the divine in the mundane, this sanctification of the human body and the natural world, sets the stage for a spiritual path that embraces rather than renounces the physical world. Now let's step back and look at the broader impact of this Indian influence on American thought. Emerson, often called the Mind of America, has been one of the most quoted American authors of the 20th century. His ideas, shaped by Vedantic concepts, have permeated American culture in ways we might not even realize. He introduced a new spirituality that emphasized direct experience of the divine, free from the dogma of monopolistic monotheistic religions. His vision of the Oversoul, a universal spirit connecting all beings, resonated with countless Americans seeking a more expansive understanding of spirituality. Thoreau's Walden continues to inspire environmentalists, nature writers, and anyone seeking a simpler, more authentic life. His ideas on civil disobedience have shaped political activism for over a century. And Whitman? His influence on American poetry and song is so profound that his legacy can be seen in many works written since the publication of Leaves of Grass. But the influence doesn't stop there. The Transcendentalist perspective, infused with Vedic concepts, has shaped American spirituality in profound ways. Every time someone checks the spiritual but not religious box on a survey or heads off to a meditation retreat, they're tapping into this lineage. The influence of these transcendentalists, and through them,
I just feel like I need to read some books from India and gain some of this wisdom and gain some of this spirituality and gain some of this knowledge.
Hindu philosophy can be traced through countless American thinkers, writers, and activists. From Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost to the beat poets of the 1950s and the counterculture of the 1960s, the seeds planted by Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman continued to bear fruit. Even more fascinating is how this influence has come full circle. Emerson's work made its way back to India, where it was embraced by reformers and spiritual leaders. Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel Prize-winning Indian writer, said, "I love your Emerson. In his work, one finds much that is of India. In truth, he made the teachings of our spiritual leaders and philosophers a part of his life."
Facts.
In a letter to his son, Mahatma Gandhi told him to advise Maganlal Bhai to read Emerson's essays, stating, "The essays to my mind contain the teaching of Indian wisdom in a Western garb." This cultural exchange, this blending of East and West, has had far-reaching effects that we're still discovering today. While the influence of Hindu philosophy on Transcendentalism is undeniable, it's important to acknowledge other contributing factors. Neoplatonism, with its emphasis on the one and the concept of emanation, also played a significant role. However, the Transcendentalists' engagement with Hindu texts provided a unique perspective on these themes, particularly the concepts of reincarnation, karma, and the illusory nature of the material world, which are less central to Neoplatonic thought. The Romantic movement, with its focus on nature, emotion, and individual experience, created a fertile ground for the reception of Eastern ideas. However, Hindu philosophy offered a more structured and metaphysical framework for these romantic sensibilities, providing a philosophical basis for the intuitive connection with nature that the Romantics emphasized. The ancient wisdom of India, translated and interpreted by British scholars, finds its way to America. There, it's embraced by thinkers like Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman, who blend it with their own insights and express it in a uniquely American voice. Their works then travel back to India, inspiring a new generation to rediscover their own spiritual heritage. Thanks for watching. Please like and share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.
That legit was incredible to see the influence that India has actually had on America. And I want to read these Emerson essays. I want to read the Walt essays. I want to read Henry David Thoreau. I want to read the Bhagavad Gita. I want to read it all because I feel like in such a way that it shaped their lives, it could help shape mine as well. That's all we have. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the next one. I'll see y'all next time.